Everybody, how's everyone doing? Hey, thank you, excellent. So you might wonder why I'm speaking into mic and there's no noise coming out. Yes, so thank you very much to everyone coming again to our fortnightly graduation showcase. We have a very special one today. I mean, they're all special, but today's extra specially special. And yes, so I think I've just got to do the fire announcements, i.e. if it goes off, the fire alarm, it is not a test, you've got to go down the stairs the way you came in. Gents' toilets are that way, ladies' toilets are that way, that's done, excellent. Yes, so the way things are going to work today is we're going to have one team presenting, and then there'll be time for questions afterwards, and if you want to ask questions on the live stream, you can just type it in as a comment underneath the picture. So yeah, so every 2 weeks we start, a project team starts spiking out an idea on a Friday, and they've got 9 business days to build the software to back up that idea. It never ceases to amaze me, and we have some previous graduates here who've built projects recently. Hi Kirsty, hi Liz. What they build and how impressive the projects are. And today's presentation is no different. So I'm going to shut up and hand the mic over to Team Paint the Town.
Okay, hello. Thank you all for coming to our final project presentation. As said, we're Paint the Town. So my name's Hazel. This is Tara, Elena, Lou, Rosie and Rob there at the computer. No one was supposed to see that one. Top right. The present button. We did practice this and everything, and next to share. Get this. Okay, so yeah, our app is called Paint the Town, and it's an app that tracks your path on a map to draw a picture. So the idea was to use geolocation to create artwork. So it was inspired by fitness apps like Strava, which say, well, if you've ever used them, they'll give you a little line that show your running route. And we noticed that sometimes people will either accidentally or intentionally use this to draw funny pictures and things like that. And we thought, why not create something specifically for that? So rather than just a little thin squiggly line, we'll let them play with different colors, different line thicknesses. We'll let them pause it and restart somewhere else and have a bit of fun drawing that. So the idea was we wanted to kind of appeal to quite creative people. So it's encouraging people to get out, to get active, but rather than it just being focused on how fast can you go, how far can you go, it's just about creating something really fun and just having a good time with that. So we're going to show you a little video of what our app can do now. We did have some jazzy music with this, but for copyright reasons, we've had to remove it, I'm afraid. So yeah, I'm just going to talk you through what's going on. So this is Alina getting prepped for her walk or her strenuous walk or run. So this is our login and sign up screen. So we use data. The user data is stored in the database, and the password verification goes through that user database as well. You can then select to start a new journey. It locates you. You can select a color for your line. And also a width using this slider here. And then when you're ready to start, you can press the play button here, and it'll start tracking your path. And as you walk around, it'll track your movement, and it'll let you draw a picture. We sped this up a little bit so we don't bore you. I was trying to draw a love heart here. It's not looking great, but I'm sure with a bit of practice or a bit more artistic ability, we could make something good. So when you're done, you can press stop, and we used a snapshot tool to save that as an image, which appears in the gallery. You can then go back any time into your gallery and edit the picture, so all the data is saved to the database with your line width, say your color, and obviously your geolocation points, and then that'll load back in the map, and as you can see, we can add onto it at a later time. So this is another one that we did. Hopefully slightly more artistic this time. So we sped it up a lot. So for the colour picker, we used an NPM package so you can select your colour there, and the slider was also an NPM ready-made NPM package. You'll notice here we've got a satellite view toggle. So you can at any point you can toggle it over to satellite view, which also we think looks pretty cool. And you'll see the button at the bottom changes colour, so you can always see what colour you're using at any point. And as you can see here, we've got gaps there. So one piece of functionality that we never could get quite right, that just wasn't possible, was rotation. So with the map view that we had, you can rotate it, but it would always snap back to north. So unfortunately, we couldn't get right back around to that. But for your viewing pleasure, we've done it there, and as you can see, we've made our lovely Northcoders logo in garish colours for you there. So now I'm going to pass over to Tara, and she's going to talk a bit about our tech stack and the back end.
Hello. So we built the back end using Node.js. When creating the piece, a call is made to the map's API every 2 seconds or 2 meters, depending on your activity. This meant we needed to store a lot of nested data, and found MongoDB offered a flexible and scalable solution for that. And we could easily retrieve it again because we needed all the coordinates and colours that were changing so much. Our images are created in a base64 format, but we couldn't store 250,000 characters to MongoDB, so we decided to use Firebase for that. We set up the RESTful API using Mongoose and Express, and we've used test-driven development throughout, building our test suites with Mocha and Chai. Now I'll hand you over to Rob, who will talk you through the front end.
Hi. So for the front end, obviously it's a mobile app. You couldn't really carry your laptop around going for a run. So due to that, we used React Native to build the app. And on top of that, we used Expo, which is a toolchain built around React Native, which offers extra functionality and also allows you to test the app as you're building it on your actual device rather than on an emulator like Xcode or Android Studio, so that we could get the full user experience as we're going through and as we built up the app. Some of the extra functionality we used were things like accessing local storage. It offers you easy access to local storage on the device. And we actually used it for getting the GPS coordinates that allows us to track the user as they go around the journey. For the map, which is obviously one of the main parts of the app, we went with the React Native maps as opposed to any other options for a couple of reasons. One, that it's totally compatible with Expo. It didn't cause any dependency issues or any other conflicts with the other things that we wanted to use on the app. And also it allowed us to use polylines to actually render the lines that the user's drawing on their journey. We had considered using a canvas rendered over the top of the map, an HTML canvas. That would have allowed us to implement further things like brush styling, and would have allowed us to do things like join the lines up a little more neatly. But due to the time constraints, because we'd have to program all the drawing elements ourselves on the canvas, we wanted to get the main functionality of the app up and running in 2 weeks, so we just went with the polylines. Of course, the choices that we did make had their own issues, especially when we actually tried to switch the app to iPhone. Like I say, the lines aren't joined together as well, and the rotated picture isn't savable. But we'll come on to that later on. But for now, I'll hand you over to Alina here, who's going to talk about how we tested the front end.
Thank you, Rob. So testing was important for us for 2 main reasons. One of them is that we just briefly touched on it during our classes here. So we were very excited to try out something new and play around with it. And also, surprise, our code didn't exactly work at some times. So we wanted to make sure that the users were getting full functionality. And when it comes to testing in front end, we chose Jest and Enzyme. Now, we found the experience with Jest and Enzyme quite different compared to one another. With Jest, we felt really comfortable working with it. Functionality-wise, it's very similar to Mocha, Chai, and Sinon taken together, but Enzyme proved to be a bit of a challenge for us initially. that's because when we read the documentation at first, a lot of things were new, and it's that thing where you need just a bit of time to sink in all that new information and start to play around with it a bit more. But we weren't discouraged by the fact that initially the tests were not working. We actually managed to get things done quite well. We kept saying to ourselves, you know what, get back to the documentation, read it again, try again, make sure the basics are right, and everything got working in the end. When it comes to testing, we wanted to focus on a few main things predominantly. For example, because we had different devices not loading up components, we wanted to make sure that it's not the devices or Expo that we used to get the app running. We wanted to make sure that the components first load properly, and then we also wanted to make sure that depending on what operating system we're on, it actually renders the proper components. We had some differences between the map and polylines, as Rob explained before, when it comes to how they function together. So it was really important on iOS to make sure that these things render for our iOS specifically. And also, when it comes to prop types, we tested them with prop types the usual way. We didn't really write tests specifically, but the prop types we actually tested on in Jest and Enzyme are the one that we pass to the children within that component, making sure that they function properly then. And also button functionality. Some of our buttons have a disabled Boolean true as a starter, but actually we used a method called simulate, and for those of you who don't know, guys, it just makes it so you mimic a press on the screen. Well, this has a bit of a bug that we had to research on. So for example, even though the disabled was true, it actually still did implement the function was still running. So we had to solve all our problems. We actually had a bit of compatibility issues, which now I'm going to hand you over to Rosie to explain to you a bit more about.
Thank you. Hi. So I'm going to talk about compatibility. So at the moment, Paint the Town is fully iOS. It's fully functional for iOS. However, when we started, that was not the intention at all. Basically, we all have Android phones, apart from Tara, who has an iPhone. So we thought, what's the point in making an iOS app when we can't test it, because we're going to all be borrowing Tara's phone just to test it. And everything went swimmingly for the first week. And then a few days ago, we went to make the function that would store all of our routes on our journeys and make a screenshot of it so that we have it in our collections and can access it back. When we realized the package that we wanted to use, the take snapshot async, just didn't work on Android at all. It basically took a picture of a black screen, and obviously that's not ideal, that's not what we wanted. We Googled, and apparently this is very common error. It's not just us doing it wrong. So that was reassuring, but also not good at all. We looked into other packages as well, and they weren't compatible with Expo, which was another essential part of our app. So the only option we had really was to start working on iOS and hoping that the rest of the code we'd written would also work for iOS. So yeah, a lot of it was okay, but there was also a lot that wasn't. So when we went out testing on iOS, after transferring it from Android, we found that the color would change, and then for some reason the width stopped working, and then the pause didn't work on iOS anymore. So basically, if we could change anything, we'd work on both iOS and Android from the beginning, so that we didn't have to go over a lot of the code that was once functional and rewrite it to be functional on both iOS and Android. So yeah, that's a big learning curve. I think that's everything in terms of that. So I'm just going to pass over to Lou, who will talk about group work and the future and what we'd like to do with that.
Nice, thank you. Okay, hi. So as you can see, we're quite a big group of people. There's 6 of us, and the good news is that we worked really well together. Got a nice picture of us all together up there. There is one disagreement that we did have, though, and I'm not going to lie, guys, it was quite a big one. And it was when we were thinking about if we wanted to show the user how far they were going on their journey, so kind of just so that you know how your distance that you've traveled, how would we show this? We had a disagreement whether it was in miles or in kilometers. And we had a vote, and it was a 50-50 split. So we decided, we looked into it further, and there's something you can use called nautical miles, which we had a little bit of fun implementing. And it turns out we didn't even use this feature anyway, so it exists and we can do it, but we chose not to include it in the app because it's more about having fun making a picture than actually how far you've gone. Some stuff that we did to help keep us organised was we had daily stand-ups and we used a Trello board. So we've got a picture of our whiteboard that we use for our daily stand-ups, and there we kind of like identified what needed doing during the day, kind of split those tasks up, and any problems that we'd encountered the previous day. Then we went and translated that onto the Trello board so people could see what everyone was working on. You can see when a task's been completed, and you can also jump in and help if anybody gets stuck. Issues that we had were just normal day-to-day things. So public transport, trains getting cancelled, people having illness. I know there was a bit of a cold going around. And how we dealt with that was just we communicated. We used Slack, we used Skype, and just stayed in touch. So if people wanted to work from home, if they got a bit stuck, we were all there. You could talk to each other. We did say if we did it again, the main thing that we'd want to address is just leaving each other some more notes in the code. So you wouldn't waste any time kind of like looking at something, sort of wondering what someone's done. It would just be there. It would be explicit. I've done this. And yeah, I think we've got a lovely slide for the future of the app. Oh, there it is. So some stuff that we'd really like to include, there's some really nice things like brush styles. So rather than just having the basic line as it shows, we thought having something like a paintbrush line or having a pencil, like a more scratchy texture, that would really encourage people and help get them involved in making more arty images. Maybe if you could turn yourself into the eraser, so you could not erase your friend's drawings, but you could go back into your own drawing and erase lines that you didn't like and change it. And speaking of friends, we thought there could be like a social aspect, so you could add your friends into the app, they could see your drawing, they could actually take and edit your drawing, so you could work together to collaborate on something, which we thought would kind of work really nicely to help gamify it. You could actually have companies go out and like encourage their employees to create their logo in places, so you'd get an award for, you know, creating your company logo in an area. And you could sort of use it for cities. So in Manchester, you could kind of say, oh, we've got the Manchester Bee, you know, and everyone could go out and draw around this Manchester Bee and it would get checked and you'd get an award for it. So we thought that would be really nice. Even basing it on a theme, you know, like it's Halloween soon, you could go and draw some pumpkins and then it would get checked and you'd get your Halloween award. So yeah, that's been us. We've been Paint the Town and we welcome any questions.
Brilliantly fun, creative. While you're all thinking of questions, we've got a couple from online. So Mark Lightwood asks, could this app be used in a community sense? So you could have some sort of forum within the app to share images and challenges, for example.
Yeah, to be honest, we really would love for that to be a part of the kind of future versions. I think actually implementing the social side would be quite a big job in terms of kind of connections and editing and that kind of thing. You also have to be quite careful. I know things like Strava have had problems with safety. So if someone can see that you're running from a certain place at certain times, you have to be really careful with making sure that only people that you've approved to see your routes can. But yeah, we definitely... Part of the idea was that we'd make it collaborative and yeah, the idea that you could do huge scale projects across a whole city. There's no kind of rules about what scale it has to be. You can zoom right out. And yeah, if there was a way to kind of create forums and create group projects, we did talk about having a kind of almost a GitHub style system so that you can kind of make your own version, like the way you clone. You fork and clone, so you can make your own version and take someone's as a starting point, or you can like submit sections. So if someone's done one and then you say, oh, I've added a bit, and then submit it to approval. And it also means if you are doing a big community project, people can't be kind of ruining the fun by drawing rude things or anything like that. So yeah, we definitely feel like that would be a really important part of the app that we'd love to explore further.
Excellent, thank you. And anyone in the room got a question? Over here, Jonathan.
Thank you, and fantastic
So to be honest, when we first started the project, we weren't really sure how to start, because although we'd obviously worked on projects throughout the course, it was very much kind of, okay, we're going to do this project, whereas this was our idea. We're like, how do we start an entire thing? So we made user stories, and then we kind of broke them down, and then just like, right, okay, this is the bare minimum we want to achieve. And in terms of who did what, it was literally like, right, who wants to do that? Who feels the most comfortable doing back end? Who wants to do front end? And we did mostly work in pairs, I would say. It kind of was towards the end when we had kind of little niggles that we were working on that people broke off into like solo things. But I'd say for like 80% of it, we did pair programming. Yeah. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Initially, we decided to split ourselves into three teams of two. So we had one team working on the back end, building up the database and making sure things were running, testing. Me and Lou, for example, we were working on the tracker component, which is our map, and making sure it runs with getting the location of the person async, which proved to be a challenge. But just so you know, guys, we've had one of those days then, where even though we're pair programming with 2 pairs of eyes, nothing's really working. But at the end of the day, 10 minutes before we actually had to go home, we actually managed to get things done. So it's one of those productive days where 2 people are just making sure everything's all right, just rushing through it. And that's pretty much how everybody else worked for the rest of them. So, yeah.
Any more questions in the room? Over here. Okay, Christopher.
So you mentioned hitting a bit of difficulty, with the rotation. So that felt like something you discover halfway through that is a bit of a curveball, a bit of a challenge. You can either choose that challenge and describe what you learned from it for future projects, or choose another challenge or mistake or kind of curveball that gave an opportunity for something interesting to learn.
So I think the thing with the rotation, I'm not quite sure. Other than use a different package, we were a bit limited. We're not at the stage where we can create our own map, and so I still think, while it was a problem, the way it was set up, it just didn't give you that functionality. You could show the compass or not. I think you could point it towards something, but it wasn't a functionality we could use. And yeah, unfortunately, it was just a limitation of the map. But overall, I still think that was the best option that we had, in terms of every kind of package had its own limitations, and that one was probably the one that was going to work for the best of us and integrated the best. In terms of challenges, I think the main one was what we mentioned, which was just the fact that Tara was working really hard on the images and spent a couple of days getting really stuck in and got it all working, was really happy. And yeah, it wasn't until we tested it on Android and went, oh, this doesn't work at all. So yeah, I still think that's the biggest learning curve, and yeah, the fact that it was slightly unlucky that she was working on the one bit on the iPhone, on the one bit that didn't work on Android. But we should have factored that in. If we were working on Android, we should have been testing that from the beginning. So I think that was the biggest lesson for us, really.
Any more challenges you want to share, or anyone else wants to share in the team? Well, it all shows working how you kind of work and your mindset. You don't have to be done with challenges. We've got another, I guess, more.
Mauron.
Anyone else? Oh, all right, back in.
We hate
Go.
Well, with Expo, it doesn't allow you to, or doesn't easily allow you to write background processes in your app. So obviously, with this, we were thinking you'd be able to put your phone in your pocket, go off on a run. However, you would need the background functionality for that. There was a package. We looked at doing it manually, way too time-consuming for 2 weeks. There was a package called Maron 85, which advertised that with Expo you could have background tracking on your GPS, and it would do it all for you. All you had to do was install it. And with about so many dependency issues, so many niggles linking the thing that the React Native links wouldn't, the inherent linking dependencies was not working. We tried to do it manually. We went through everything we could in the Gradles in the Android, trying to link it up, and it just would not have it. So we ended up saying that, okay, we're just going to make it so it keeps the app in the foreground. Unfortunately, we would really like to have put the background processing in, but just weren't able to. Also, just mentioning about to a challenge that overcame, when we changed to iOS, as Rosie said, it wasn't fully functional for some reason on iOS. It turns out that while the way we'd had the data stored in state, which is how you store data in a React app, we'd formatted it for Android so we could map over it very easily and get map over an array of objects, grab the keys out. But for Android, it takes a whole different format for the colors and the coordinates. So after I wrote a function to change the data that we had stored to a different format and render it on iOS, it would render the first line only. As soon as you paused it or you changed width, then that's it. It's not going to do it anymore. And it turns out, for some bizarre reason, in the map view, with the polylines that we used, iOS just would not take an array. Like, it would not take an array out whatsoever. So we've got in hard-coded sort of, it's 20, just straight up hard-written things that are saying this index, this index, this index, because it's the only way it would work. So yeah, we worked around that one in that manner, but it took a long time to realize that it would not take an array as a thing, which is very unusual for React, but we did that.
I think it's amazing. You know, what you guys build in 9 days is great, but the fact that you know that you've got that time constraint and you go, right, if I had this time, we could do it in a totally different way or in a slightly slicker way or whatever, but the fact that you've got this sort of ticking clock against you just kind of makes you be even more creative to find a solution. And just hearing you talk about that, I think, is great. Any more questions in the room from the students, teachers? Okay, I think we've got one sort of final question here. I guess, Charlotte, it's kind of, it's a question. So do you think that you could sort of make a feature whereby you could have templates for beginners for the not too arty types?
And we discussed that. That was part of our sort of third level, if we got that far, was to do, for example, like, as was alluded to, the Manchester Bee, where it would show you the route that you'd have to run round, and it would track it and draw it and change colour for you and everything. But that was mostly about going out, getting an achievement, and it would draw the bee. It would sort of tell you where to go to draw the bee. Unfortunately, again, time constraints, we didn't get to that level 3 stage. But yeah, absolutely, that was one of the things we'd already considered.
Fantastic. Well, look, I think we should just give these Paint the Town guys and girls a big round of applause. Well done for a brilliant project. So the plan now, I think, is